You're listening to the Breezy Moms podcast on Digital Stream Radio.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the Breezy Moms podcast, a weekly show that chronicles the adventures of motherhood. I'm Candace. Now let's start the show. Hey guys.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Candace?
I'm so excited to be here.
I feel like I haven't seen you in like a year.
Well, it's been 2 whole weeks. That does feel like a year because we've been doing this every week. I was thinking about why it felt like so long, and we literally have been doing this every week since March.
I know, and it's like, I'm like
34 weeks or whatever.
I said to
it's
myself,
like almost more than a pregnancy. That's that's like a real baby. That baby would survive.
Your baby came to full term. And now it's time to let it out into the world and see what happens. Lord have mercy, it's going to be crazy. Another doorman running around.
Hey, first of all, relax, all right? Let's wheel it back. I didn't know that's where we were going with that.
No, well, it was Thanksgiving week, and you had so much going on your plate, and I know that we had scheduled to record on Wednesday, and you just...
And then people started coming. Like, people started coming to the house, or, like, I knew they were coming on Wednesday before the holiday, but I didn't realize and I was open, and you always have some people got out of work early and they came and got their kids, and other people got out of work early and went to do some things before coming to get their kids. So I was working until the last minute, and then people started showing up at my house. So I just really I didn't feel like I could pull away in order to come, even though I really, really, really wanted to.
But, in the end, it's always good to have a little break, you know? You deserve a break. I mean, you work so hard. You're hashtag mom working so hard all the time. So a little break here and there. And, you picked the right week to do it, right? Yes. Because it's a holiday week. People are already running around with like a chicken with no head. You go into the supermarket, you're standing in that last minute line, which is just absolutely atrocious.
I know. I sent James for like 4 things, and he spent $200. So I was like, wait a minute. What just transpired here?
It's like gas during a hurricane. It's like markup.
Yes. But it was good. I mean, we're still eating through. I actually don't think I'm going to order any food. I didn't order any food for this week. I'm like, we're just going to eat through whatever's left over. We didn't have a ton of leftovers because I'm going to blame James for this. James likes to clean out, start fresh for the next day. So I think we had 1 day of leftovers, and I was looking for turkey, and the turkey was gone. So there wasn't we don't do those turkey sandwiches, those Thanksgiving sandwiches the next day.
Yeah.
James tells a story about how when he first came here, some kid at school asked him something about sandwiches, and he was like, "What?" And then they were talking about Thanksgiving sandwiches, and he was like, "What are you talking?" It's like, "Why would you put turkey on bread? That's not how you eat turkey."
I mean,
it just to a Ghanaian, a fresh Ghanaian from from Ghana, was just like, why would you waste time on sandwiches? That's not a thing. But now he's American and he understands.
No, my neighbor
Americans' obsession with sandwiches.
My neighbor actually, she made turkey soup.
Okay.
And she dropped off 5 containers of it. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't make a turkey this year. I made a pork shoulder roast.
Nice.
Or as they say, pernil.
Pernil.
It's so good.
I love pernil.
And so she ended up bringing me some turkey soup. And let me tell you, oh God, that was heaven. Heaven in a plastic cup.
I never really want turkey because who likes turkey anyway? But 2 things. 1, my mother-in-law says we have to have turkey because our kids can't be the only kids at school that are like, oh, we didn't have turkey. It's all about fitting in for some of these things. Just even if it's a small turkey, Lincoln and Emery need to be able to say they had turkey because everybody had turkey. And I'm like, listen, sometimes you got to stick out because turkey sucks.
Yeah.
But number two, James brined the turkey, and we found this recipe. It was a Caribbean brine, which we only used half of because it was a last minute decision, and I wasn't going out to buy rum to soak turkey in.
What's wrong with you? It's rum.
I know, but I mean, it's rum.
It's like, hello.
But I guess if you're going to eat turkey, it might as well be soaked in rum.
But, you soak it in rum for the flavor, not so much for getting drunk. Obviously. Because when you cook it, it's gone.
Obviously, I know. The whole point is that the brine made that turkey so juicy, and then my mother-in-law put her magic on it, and it was just incredible. And it was the first time I was like, oh, I want more turkey, and there was no more. So anyway, I was happy with the food situation, although every time my mother-in-law comes to the house to make food, there's so much food. It's a lot a lot of food. And so we had a small, like, I don't know how big the turkey was, but we had maybe a medium-sized turkey. And then she made lobster, she made pork, she made like some kind of shrimp dish. She made like 2 pots of jollof. I mean, like, there's always so many things, and I just get overwhelmed. So I walk out of the kitchen. I'm like, just call me when call me when it's time to clean up. I do the cleanup. I don't get involved in any of the cooking.
Well, she's got it good, this one.
Well, and I hosted, so so I know my role, and I work it really well.
No, I ended up doing mac and cheese, like homemade mac and cheese. The roast we did. My friend Nick does a really good like kale salad with like white vinegar, like white wine vinegar and strawberries, and it was a whole bunch of just deliciousness. And then we did buffalo chicken dip that he does in the crock pot, and it comes out so good. And we literally sat here and barricaded ourselves in this house for 3 days and did nothing but just watch movies, eat, and lounge on the sofa and watch HGTV.
That's great. I love it. I mean, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I want to prep. That's not the right word, but first, before we go into the boys and the thing that we do, I just want to say that my friend Ellen is here joining us. My good old friend. I always say that and it always sounds so weird. My really long-term friend. That also sounds weird. My really good friend Ellen, who I've known since I was like 15, is here in studio to talk with us today. And so she's going to be joining us in a few minutes. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody sticks around for that.
That's right. We have a guest in house.
Yes, we have a guest in house, and it's so exciting. So we're back from a week off, and we have someone in the studio. So
awesome. So
anyway, it's feeling really good.
I have a question for you.
I'm listening.
How are your boys?
The boys are good. Are they good?
They're
good. Everybody's sick. I don't know who started the sickness, but it often happens when people come to my house, right? Because you get sort of the word inoculated to the people that you're around all the time, and then 10 new people show up and bring whatever kind of.
But you also have kids that come in your house.
I know, but I have the same 6 kids, right? So we're a gang and we're good. But when anybody else comes over, then we all get sick. So we had all those people over for Thanksgiving, and somebody must have been sick because and then everybody was at their own house with all the people and like visiting wherever. So from Monday morning, one kid came sick. Emery was sick. Another kid was sick. Tuesday, a different kid was sick. Wednesday, a different. So like today's the 4th day. Literally everyone in the program has been sick.
Wow. So that means everyone's going through it right now.
Right. Everybody's going through it right now and is not really their like regular self, which is, has its challenges for one adult in the house with 6 kids.
Time to get an assistant.
So whether I'm sick tomorrow or not, I've decided to take a mental health cleanup day. I told the families, I was like, everybody seems to be on the mend. I'm just going to take the day tomorrow to like recover myself and disinfect the whole house so that Monday when we can start fresh on Monday. And everybody was cool. I mean, you have to be cool, but everybody's cool with it. And so everybody's going to go into the weekend kind of good. So I'm looking forward to having a day tomorrow, maybe clean a little bit, but also just get a second to rest. I'm looking forward to it. And so that means that the boys have kind of been in and out of sickness, illness, coughing, runny nose. It's the runny nose. Like, I know that when your nose is stuffed and you can't breathe, it's really uncomfortable. But when it's running, it's uncomfortable for me.
And it's not like kids know that, they should go grab a tissue, right? They just run around and, they've got like this 2 lines going straight down their face. And you're like, do you not feel that?
And I love them, but it's disgusting.
Go get a tissue.
And they like it because it's salty. Yeah. Oh, it's all over my house. So, yeah.
And I'm like, please don't come near me. Right. Oh, Lord have mercy. But it happens though,
Yeah. But
I have to say it's what, November?
And it's not a bad illness. I should say it's not like a
flu.
It's not a flu or anything. It's just like a common cold, a runny nose sort of thing. Yeah. So it could always be worse, but it still takes its toll.
I have to tell you that this year I've been quite fortunate. I think the last time I got sick was last January.
Wow.
But all year long I've been good to go.
That's great.
It's exciting to like go through the year without having to like I got into this little allergic thing, like the allergies like in like early spring, but nothing out of the ordinary.
That's good.
But I'm happy.
That's good.
Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
I've got another 30 days till the end of the year and I don't want to get sick, and you've just literally said, "Oh, yeah, you know."
I mean, it's just a runny nose. It's not the kids they don't have fevers because they can't come if they have a fever. It's been fine. It's just each of them in their house with their parents is okay. It's when they're all in my house, like all 6 of them with one person at once, that makes it a little tough. So
and they're irritable, and you know, and they get a little cranky, and
they're nipping at each other. Yeah.
One starts crying, and then the other one keeps going. It's like a little chain reaction.
Yes,
you know?
That's exactly what it's like. And they're all of the kids in my program. It's probably like this for everybody, but it feels like in my program, my kids are especially empathetic, and so as soon as one is upset, the other one gets upset, right? As soon as one starts crying, the other one starts crying. One of the little boys in my program was crying because a baby in the book was crying. Like, they are really in tune to everyone else's feelings. And so when the air is irritable, they're all irritable. And then when it's good, so what I've been doing over the week is when they start to get a little antsy, I just put everybody in their coats. I was like, let's go outside. Let's get some fresh air. Everybody has enough space to go and play in your own corner. And of course, they go and jump on top of each other. Like, we came outside for more space. Why are you all fighting in a corner?
Well, kids will be kids.
I know.
You know.
But that has been my go-to response when it starts to get a little too much inside the house. Just like, all right, everybody's shoes, let's go outside.
And I have to say, though, I mean, I've been in your home, and the space that you have dedicated to your kids is pretty substantial. I mean, they have a lot of room, but you're right. Get them outside. Yeah. You know,
and it's good. It's good for them. It's good for me. It's good for all of us. And I've been reading a lot about making time to spend time outside. I have the kids napping outside sometimes. In the spring and summer, we did a lot. And now it's mostly the little kids sleep outside. The babies are sleeping outside so that the big kids can actually get outside, or else because I can't leave kids in the house sleeping. And if I wait for all the babies to sleep inside, then the big kids never get to go outside. So anyway, we do a little Scandinavian napping. I have them all wrapped up.
You were talking about that before.
In their rockers outside. Fresh air. And today the sun was beaming. So it was like, even though it's cold, it's warm for them. And I'm always checking them because, I'm like a paranoid old black lady, right? Are they cold? Are they cold? Remember my friend Isabel was here and she was like, are they going to catch a draft? No, I say draft. She was like, you have to be warm.
Sereno.
Right, sereno.
We were talking about those mysterious diseases that parents used to tell us as we were growing up that we would get if we would step outside and it was misting or something. My grandmother was, ay, te va a coger un sereno. I'm like, Grandma, what is that?
Right,
or la monga, right?
I don't know that. I've never heard
La
that one.
monga is a version of a cold, but they call it la monga. And I'm like, Grandma, that's not like scientifically like identified term for illness.
Sounds like draft.
Yeah, you may just have like a cold. Mm-hmm. She's like, no, it's la monga. I know it is.
Yeah, my mom does that too. She's all wrapped up in July.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know what people have. Like, you're so ridiculous. But anyway, so I'm always checking them. Got my fingers like stuck down their neck, making sure that their bodies are still warm and everything is good. And so I'm like obsessed with making sure that they're warm, even though we're outside. But I really like it, and the parents are cool with it, and everybody's cool. And they sleep really well when they've got fresh air. It's good all around. It's good all around. And Susanna was at the house cleaning today, so I've already gotten a good head start on the disinfecting. So she cleaned everything.
She is really prepping herself up for a good weekend. That's what she is.
Or else then Monday I'm going to be like super sick. You know what I mean?
Grab a bottle of wine and
I have to clean all the toys.
Yeah.
Like, Susanna doesn't clean the toys, but the house. What's I was just like leaning into today is like, I pay this woman to come and clean the house, and when she leaves, it basically looks the same as it did when she got there, but I know that the base is clean, right? Because as soon as she leaves her room, the kids go in and throw all the toys on the floor. So whenever she leaves, it's never like picture perfect, like someone just came and cleaned your house, but the floors are shining. It smells like lemon and pine sol. Like that the place is clean.
You remember that commercial, right? What happens when you use lemon-scented pine sol?
What?
You get lemon-scented germs. It was. I think it was a commercial for.
Does that mean it's not clean?
I think it was Lysol.
Oh Lord!
They were making a commercial against Pine Sol, and I was like,
petty.
"Oh Lord, have mercy."
I love it.
But.
Yeah, so I'll spend a little time like disinfecting toys and stuff, but at least the house is, the base of the house is clean. So I'm feeling good about that. And the last thing I'll say about the boys is, James, have you seen James lately?
I have not seen your husband in such a long time.
You're missing out.
I miss your husband.
You are missing out.
He was my gossip queen in the office.
First of all, stop calling my husband that. You mean he always had the good information?
Yes.
No, but I know you miss him. I appreciate it. But he looks so good. I just saw him today, and I just saw him. I see him every day, right? But I saw him tonight, and he still got his beard going, right?
Well, it's No Shave November, so he better.
Yeah, but that's not why he's doing it.
December 1st, he can shave.
Yeah, that's not a thing for us or for him. I mean, you could ask him, but it's probably not.
It's big in our office. To see some people with beards, like all of a sudden it's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Because you're not used to seeing people who are always clean shaven with beards. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm really digging it. And tonight I saw him and he was standing under the light and he's really into like the beard oils. Like he's trying to groom it and such. So it's like glistening. I was like, dude, I can't keep up with you. Like it makes me want to go in the bathroom and make sure I like, shit in my teeth or something. Because he's just looking really good. So
good for him.
Yeah, you miss him.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah. Anytime I need any information, I'm like, I just walk right over. Yeah. Have you heard? What's going on? And it's like,
whatever.
Yeah. I miss it.
Yes. Well, he has the good information, but it sounds like you're always looking for information.
Well, I always need something. Trust me. I always need something and someone to go after. So that's totally me. No, but seriously, like when I knew something was going on and I knew that he knew something was going on, because we were like 5 cubicles away from each other, our heads would pop up. We would look at each other, start giggling and sit back down because we already knew, that's sort of kind of like I knew that, oh, he's got scoop. That means that at some point I need to make my way over there with a piece of paper and pretend. Mm-hmm, what are we doing?
And he's good for it. I think the both of us, it's kind of like a thing. People, I find this because when I'm out, like strangers, I walk away and I'm like, why do I know all of this stuff about a stranger? Like people want to tell us things, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what it comes from. I don't know what I'm like giving off, but people are just like, oh, I really needed to tell somebody. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's me.
I'm going to take that information and disseminate it and just try to figure out how I feel about that.
Right. Now. Or just like, okay, I'm glad that was good for you. Like, okay, I hope you feel better. But people need that, that it's a role in the community to be a good listener.
Somebody
right?
has to be the person
Somebody has to be a good listener.
Somebody has to be an unloader and somebody has to get loaded.
Yes.
That's so just how it's true.
That's so true. And those two things are never from the same person, right? Because someone who listens a lot is usually quiet,
and then
you don't know anything. You don't know anything about James, right? Like I'm just like James. He's like, people are like, you're having a baby, and he's like, oh, he's 2. Just
like 2 years.
Yeah, I had
ago?
him 2 years ago.
Me personally, no. My wife, yes.
Right. Right.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
So, yeah, the boys are good.
Awesome.
Everything's good. So
I'm glad you're back.
Yes, me too. It's good to be back. I missed you. Did that sound like it's good to be black? Because
yes, it did.
That is also true. Like I feel good about that too.
For a moment, I had to think. I'm like, did she just say back or black?
Yes.
I'm like, I was like, oh gosh, she had a Amy Winehouse moment. Where she was singing, and I think she was supposed to say, back to black, and she was like, back and back. And I was like, ooh, you missed it.
Right.
Caught it.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I guess that's how I feel inside. You know what? But the last thing I'll say, I was looking at something today, and this woman posted that the school, the black woman posted that her kid's school emailed her with a concern about an incident that happened in the school. And they were like, today at school, Mariah was running around saying, I have black girl magic. and it was making the other girls upset, and they cried. We hope that you'll talk to her. You'll be willing to talk to her about this.
She had black girl magic.
Yes, the little girl was walking around telling everybody that she had black girl magic. But the best part is that, and it was making little white girls cry. And then the adults in the room called her mom to say, stop making little white girls cry. So the comments were fucking gold. I mean, the comments were just like fucking white tears start at 5 now? Like, what? Like, what? Why is that? So, oh my God, it was so amazing.
Oh my God, it's like, that's the equivalent of the guy with the big neck. Have you been seeing all the memes? Yes. Oh my God, I can't. See you next. It
looks not real. It looks like, do you see Mario and Luigi, the like movie from 1993?
No.
He looks like those things. Well, if you haven't seen it, then you don't know. It was like a real live movie version of Mario and Luigi.
I remember seeing a little bit of it, but I can't remember too much.
Yeah. Anyway, it was these big things. I remember the scene of John Leguizamo like getting them to, because they're stupid dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to sneak out, and he just starts rocking them, and all of a sudden they're all rocking so that they can sort of like swaying. You just start swaying one, and then the other one sways, and then they're all swaying because they're stupid, like they're big and they have small brains. Anyway, why was I talking about that? Oh, the neck, the dinosaur neck. But back to the little girl who's just like, and good for them. Like, I'm not going to shame a mom who is teaching her daughter to be happy and proud of who she is. And like, fuck those people.
Like seriously,
what kind of conversation is that? I must reprimand my daughter for being happy, like for having some self-pride at 5 years old. Nobody's got that at 5 years old.
I wouldn't have the heart to do that.
Right.
To look at my child
because
and say,
some other little
that.
girl was crying.
That's your problem.
Oh my God, I can't even.
Yeah.
But anyway, I forget why we were there. Oh, because I'm happy I'm black? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I wish I knew that when I was 3, right? I wish that I had always felt that way. I don't know that I didn't, but I don't know that I did. But I know I feel it now, and I guess it's just coming out. It's just pouring out of me.
I can guarantee you that little girl knows.
She does. She does.
It's a beautiful thing.
Remember Tia, who was on a couple, maybe last month or something?
We're friends on Facebook now. I'd be watching all her little exercise videos. I was like, girl, you're exhausting me.
She is, just from the video on my couch eating popcorn.
I'm seriously, I'm like hyperventilating in my chair just watching her go.
Yes. So her son's class, the teacher is amazing, and she had them one applying for classroom jobs, like the classroom helpers, but she made them apply like with real applications and tell me what your qualities are, and they had to give resumes. And then her next lesson was they did a student government. They're 4, and so Masai was running for senator. And he won. And he won, and he got up and said like all the reasons why you should vote for him. And he was like, because I'm nice and my family's nice, and we're all going to go to Africa, and you guys can come too. You can come to Africa. You can come to Africa. He was like inviting everybody to come back to Africa. And it was just like, it's just incredible that an incredible reminder that it is up to us as parents and as people of color, right, to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to fill our kids up so early on, because there's just a lifetime of people trying to take from them, right? And so if you can fill them up,
down, yep.
Yeah, if you can fill them up now at 3, 4, like let people be shocked that your 4-year-old is running around saying, I have black girl magic. Let them be shocked.
Absolutely. I mean, the deck is already stacked against people of color to begin with. Mm-hmm. Even before you're born and not even know it, the deck is already stacked. So if they know it at 4, you know what? More power to them.
I'm here for it.
That's awesome.
Okay, so let's move on so we don't run out of time with Ellen.
No, that's right, because we've got Ellen in the studio. How are you, Ellen?
Hi. I'm loving the conversation.
We
love it.
We can get lost in conversation very quickly.
And every time I'm like, okay, we're going to start now. And then I look back, I'm like, oh, but it was 10 minutes ago that I had that thought. Anyway, I'm so glad that you're here. Everyone, Ellen, like I said, is my good friend from high school. I've known it's like 20 years now.
That's crazy.
It's a long time. And you are in Connecticut. You live in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. You're from Connecticut. And you are doing some really cool foundation work with the Community Foundation of Greater Waterbury? Is that what it's called?
We have a funky name that doesn't really, it's the Connecticut Community Foundation, because we were the first community foundation started in the state of Connecticut, but that's a little bit of a lie because we only cover 21 towns in the western part of the state.
Okay.
So,
but you're in Waterbury.
We're in Waterbury, yeah. Okay. And I live and work in Waterbury.
Mm-hmm. And so
the Brass City.
Yes, the Brass City. But you're from Wallingford.
I am.
Yeah, so you were a day student at school when I met you.
Yes.
And let's see, what else? And then you live with your wonderful family, who I love. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah, well, you've talked about this for a while, Candace, and I love your podcast. And so it's great to be a part of it.
I'm so glad. So let's just jump right in. So I wanted to bring you on because we are we're 35, right?
Oh,
you're 36.
36.
Yes. So there's a couple of us in the group we're all the same year in school, but you guys are old, beginning of the year. Anyway, None of that matters. I remember when you started dating Mark, we must have been 25.
It was 11 years ago. Yeah.
So you were 25.
I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah, 25. Yep.
So you were 25, and I remember coming to your apartment because it was cool. You had your own apartment in Wallingford.
That's so cool.
Whatever.
Don't knock it though. Wallingford has their own power company, and they're not reliant on public power, and their power's super cheap. An AC bill that I would get here for $200 would be $60 there.
This is true.
Just saying.
It's true, but Wallingford
has
its other issues.
It's in the middle of nowhere, but yeah.
Yes, it's got its other issues.
You have to spend most of your commute dodging trains.
Yes, literally. Anyway, I remember coming to visit you in your apartment and thinking how cool you were and things were just going so well for you. And then we met your boyfriend, and I kind of have this small memory of being oh, okay, this is cool because he was so much older than we were. And now, 11 years later, I can't remember exactly what I was thinking. I always thought he was cool. I don't know if I thought this would last forever. This would be this just an interesting thing for now. But here we are 11 years later, and he's still around and he's still pretty cool. And so I just wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit about being in a partnership. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but being in a partnership with someone who is almost 20 years your senior, so you're different generations, who had a whole life before he met you, and children and ex-wife, all of that stuff. It brings me back to this conversation I keep having about realizing when you're grown, right? This is grown folk shit, right? This is grown woman shit. Have a partner, have some pseudo stepkids and ex-wives in the deal. This is grown folk stuff. And it reminds me that we're grown. And I just wanted to, I know most of the answers to this, but I think that there's lots of, talk about what it's like when you're dating someone who's older, whether it's okay for it to be an older man. I think usually it's okay when it's an older man.
Right.
It seems less okay when it's an older woman. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there. And so I just wanted to sort of talk about it with somebody I know who's going through it and share it with the world. So why don't we start by just telling me a little bit about how you met Mark and how long you guys have been together?
So, I love to hear your synopsis, Candace, and especially the meeting him, which has always been a weird thing for me, how people react to that. Although he's a little bit of an age imposter, which I'm reminded of a lot when I see other people who are in their 50s.
I mean, he had a ponytail.
Yeah, and when people who are in their 50s and I see them, I'm like, oh, you look really old.
Right, you look like a 50-year-old.
He doesn't look that old, does he? So Mark and I met at work, and we were friends for 2 years before we started hanging out just as friends on our own, and then realized there might be something more there, which I think our relationship works in part because we got a lot of the groundwork out of the way about the way he thinks and handles challenges and situations and his life view. And we figured that we were really simpatico before we had gotten into being partners, intimately involved. And I was actually going to leave the state, believe it or not, and go out to Seattle, and realized I couldn't afford it because I have a ton of student loans still. And then I ended up sticking around, and we started dating. And our relationship has really been built around in two things. One, which is a little bit random, but the New York Yankees, because we spent one spring and summer, going to a game every 3 weeks. And
Wow.
we'd drive down to Yankee Stadium together in the middle of the week after work. And so we had a 2.5-hour drive down to the Bronx, and then we'd have the whole game sitting next to each other, and then we'd drive back. And that was kind of a big bonding moment. And I realized if I didn't mind being in the car for or spending 8 hours.
Yeah, because isn't a baseball game 3 weeks
long?
long?
Baseball games forever, and they're not really they can be interesting,
right.
But they're not.
You got to fill the void.
They're not inherently interesting. And if you don't know someone well, you feel like you need to talk. You can't just sit there.
Right.
And so we did that for a while, and I realized that maybe he's not a bad guy to hang out with. And, and I think after we had, so it was so funny. We both needed confirmation that it was okay for us to date because I was 25 and he was 42, and we had similar positions in our office and our nonprofit. And so it wasn't like he was my supervisor or anything. And then we had a friend who was older than Mark, who was friends with us both. And we had shared our relationship issues with both of her. And he had been online dating and not finding it satisfying and all this stuff. And so he turned to one of our mutual friends and said to her, would it be bad if I dated someone, Ellen?
She's
Ellen. 18 years younger.
Yep.
And I know you have an issue when I date younger women. Would you have a problem me dating her? And this friend was like, actually, no, because she's an old soul.
I was just going to say that about you.
Yeah. And she was like, no, she's not young.
Yeah. She's not a twit.
No, she can handle it. She can deal with this. Mm-hmm. And so after that, I think that allowed him permission to act on what we had been feeling. Mm-hmm. And then I think we had a very adult conversation about what it would mean for the two of us to date. And I distinctly remember it in the room over the garage one night, the fun room.
The fun room.
Yeah. And then we were like, all right, we should give it a try. And now it's 11 years later.
Wow.
And that's
Did you talk to someone? So he talked to this friend. Who did you talk to get, what did it take for you to feel like you could date him?
Well, I don't know if I realized how much was at stake for me. I mean, I think I had it's hard dating in Connecticut. It's hard finding people, and it's hard. And so if you find someone who you jive with, it's just kind of a no-brainer that you should give it a try. And I think I had been casually seeing a couple people who I was not thrilled with. And so I was like, why not?
Right.
And I guess I had met his kids a couple times.
And they were how old when you guys met?
9 and 11.
Okay.
And he has, at that time, he had halftime custody. So we had them on Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and his wife had them Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And so, I say we after I moved in.
Right.
It seems like yesterday. And so, but on the weekends, sometime when we first started dating, I knew them and we'd go to joint events. And I remember we had one Saturday where we all went down to the British Museum of Art at Yale. And had a full day with them. And then they came over my apartment that you met Mark at in Wallingford. And the girls hung out and they thought it was so cool to be in my apartment. And so I guess it didn't really sink in what it would be to be the bonus person. Someone I was friends with who had dated people. She was divorced and she had her own kids, but she had dated people who had their own kids too. And she said, I always thought of it as being a bonus person in their life. So you're never going to replace their mom. You're not a parent. And especially for me, because they're younger, but the age difference between Mark's kids and me is less than between their dad and me, which is weird. And so you're not going to be that, but you can be a bonus person in their life.
That's a great term.
Yeah.
Like a great
way
of thinking about it.
Exactly. So that has always helped me frame what that could be. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off from being the parent, but being someone who has information, has a little bit more knowledge about life, and can be supportive and helpful without having all the pressure of being the parent.
I love it. I love this idea of a bonus person. Because there's co-parent or stepmom or, that kind of, and those things come with, I think co-parent seems a little bit new, but stepmom, And obviously more than just girlfriend, right? Like you're not just his girlfriend.
Yeah, we tried to create, like maybe 4 or 5 years into the relationship, Mark and I tried to figure out a word for it that was in partner, which,
let's talk about it.
Talked about the whole partner thing because there's so many assumptions when you say partner in our society. So many more heterosexual couples are partnering up without marrying. But I still feel like every time I say partner, especially in Waterbury, where partner is in a more conservative town, partner definitely means like there's a red flag. Are you with a woman? What does that mean? Which is a good thing. That's great.
They can't put you in a box when you say partner.
Well, they do. Yeah.
They try to. But they don't know how to.
Exactly.
They're like, I think you're a lesbian, but I need confirmation.
Good try. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
No. And sometimes it's fun to roll with that too, because I like making people uncomfortable occasionally. Got to fight those boxes. So sometimes I do follow up with a he right after that so that they are aware of gender relationships. And then often it's funny how many people feel bold enough to say, well, why aren't you married?
Interesting.
Which I get.
Like rude.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, I don't want to get married. Thanks.
Yeah.
I honor the institution, but not for me. Thank you. I'd like to be able to cut and run.
It's like, why are you an asshole?
Right.
Let's have that conversation.
Yeah. Well, and then the second conversation that happens, which is really fascinating for people, is so are you going to have children? When they find out that he has kids who are older. And
Again,
don't you want to have your own kids with him?
Such an inappropriate question. I mean, I understand people's wanting to like sort of kind of again peg you and put you in a box. Like you're not a parent, so you've got to be this type of person, or you are a parent, so you're understanding and I can relate to you. But asking that question, like someday someone's going to ask someone, are you going to have kids? And that person is not going to be able to have kids.
Right.
And they're super bummed about it.
That's already happened.
And they're going to like just start swinging and just go psycho on you. So just, mind your business.
Even in a hetero couple, right? This question about when are you guys going to have kids? Like you literally have no idea what that person has been doing. Maybe they have been trying for years. Maybe they just had a miscarriage. Like what the hell? Like,
right. No.
And also, those I feel like those kind of questions come most from people who don't have any business even knowing the answer, right? Because if you have to ask that question, it means that you and I have never gotten to a place where I feel comfortable to confide in you, right? Which means move along. You know what I mean?
No, strangers are the most forward individuals. I once had...
They have nothing to lose.
Right. I think Miranda was 13 and I was in Stop and Shop with her. And I was buying beer, so I was like 20 or 30 by this point.
So you're just some person
I'm just there, legal age, buying Corona on a hot summer day, right? And this woman, she was in her 60s, and she looks at me, and she looks at Miranda, and she says, I'm not selling you this beer. You're going to resell to this minor right here. This is for this minor. And I looked at her, and I said, no, this is not for this minor. I'm of legal age. This is my partner's daughter. And she's out with me. We're grocery shopping
and I'm buying beer because I want beer. Bitch, get out my business.
Exactly. And she just looks so dirty at me. She's like, oh, there's something wrong. I knew there's something wrong. I was like, you have to legally sell me this. Thank you. Like,
thanks. Move along.
They're a mess. I'm telling you. It's just, to me, it's just so inappropriate how people sometimes think that it's okay to intrude in someone's life when it's really none of your business.
None. Not even a little bit. So so you mentioned it's 18 years. Has the gap ever come up? Like, so you talked a little bit about what it took for you guys to decide that you could maybe try this out.
Yeah.
But has it ever been an issue with your families, his family, your parents? You know, I think about your parents, right? 'Cause I still think we're little. But like when you were introducing him to your family, to your friends, did you ever feel like we were like, dudes old? Like, how did it ever come up in that way?
It's so funny because I don't think it came up with you guys who knew me really well and knew who I was. And I think I always assumed that, especially our crew that's gone back to high school, just wants what's best for one another. And it's more about the quality of the relationship than the optics of age or anything like that. It was definitely a question with my parents, but there was a couple layers with my parents. I think I grew up in a really Christian conservative home where there were a lot of expectations about how I should partner up and what was required to partner up and what you should do to do that, marriage, church, babies, all that jazz. And so I think I remember they knew I was hanging out with someone and I worked with, and I talked about him. And I think I had talked about him before we started dating, just in the context of a coworker. And there was a couple of years, I don't know, it might have been 4 years or so ago. Time kind of melts together. And when my mom said, or my dad said, you guys don't have to be married. He's part of the family and you're married in our eyes. Which is
it's
a
like
bizarre
almost
thing.
good. So it's like, oh, I was like, oh, they're there. Wait, no, they're not.
But to me, that's as close as we're gonna get. So it's like he's our son-in-law, and we accept you and your lifestyle because we know it's healthy and great, and we love him and we love his kids, and in a lot of ways, his kids are like their grandchildren. And it's funny, the girls, as they were growing up, I was having nieces, and my siblings were having nieces and nephews who are babies. And so they're the older cousins to my siblings' kids. Cool. And it is cool. And I use for my brother Ben, who has 4 kids now, the oldest is 10. And I talk to Reed often about, Lily and Miranda are doing this and that, and this is what they're doing in college. And so they're models for older cousin models for my nieces and nephews, which is really great. So I think it took some time for them to get used to the concept, but I think the health of our relationship, and I've stopped being fearful about talking about my relationship with them. So letting them know what's good about it, where I have challenges, like every normal adult has challenges in their relationship, asking them for advice, but also I've put some boundaries into where they can cross over and talk to me. My mom had this weird thing that she did, and she didn't know what to call me to the girls because she's very formal. So sometimes she wants to say your mom. And I remember maybe 2 or 3 years into the relationship, my mom would go to the girls, Mark's daughters, "Oh, your mom." And I
said, you?
About me.
Oh boy.
And I remember going to my mother, this is getting a little confusing, and I said, "Mom, you're not allowed to say that.
Yeah.
They call me Ellen. Use my first name. I'm not their parent.
Right.
They have a mom.
She's still around.
She's
they see
good
her every week.
They see her. She's healthy.
Yeah.
She's engaged." So I think for people who didn't have a lot of outside exposure to what different relationships could be, that's been the most interesting adjustment for my family, is to get used to
Ellen.
Yeah, just use my name.
Yeah, it's easiest.
Yeah. But so no, we've gotten there.
Good.
Yeah.
That's so good. And then I had just a thing I was thinking about. Have you and Mark ever had a funny or an interesting cross-generational misstep or mishap or something that you called him an age imposter, which I think is so perfect, right? It's so perfect. But just a thing that is weird for someone who's born in the 80s versus someone who's born in the 60s. Anything ever come up that you guys had to sort of reconcile between the two of you?
You'd think it would come up more often than it has. So the other weird thing about the way I was raised was that we didn't have cable, and so I wasn't exposed to a lot of pop culture. So I was exposed to things that Mark was exposed to when he was a kid. And so I actually have I watched I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners.
Oh my God, I love I Love Lucy.
Yeah. And so I watched all these things that were all cultural touch points for him too. So I actually have, I'm able to pick up on some of that. When we first started dating, and I think I was more insecure about our age difference and needing to know more knowledge because he had so much knowledge than I did.
Right.
Because
so much life.
Yeah, he was around for 18 years. He had girlfriends and a wife. And
children,
lived abroad,
right.
and work experience, and he's someone who's culturally just really absorbs music and movies and is an audiophile and in a way that I really was not. And so I think once I got over the fact that there are going to be some things in my life that I'm interested in, like world music and books and the different things that I have that I'm going to continue to develop on my own, whether we were in a relationship or not. And that I can learn from him, but I also don't need to think that he's the be-all, end-all of knowledge as someone who's 18 years older than me. Mm-hmm. But so no, there wasn't any like weird hiccups technology-wise. I think I was slightly more advanced than him for a while, but that's like all even now. Right. I mean, he's the one who got an Apple TV, and
they catch up quick.
They do. Yeah.
I mean, and listening to everything, it's like I was with someone for 7 years that was 15 years my senior. Mm-hmm. And there's a comfort that comes with knowing that someone's actually got their shit together. Mm-hmm. And so while and I'm not saying that you don't, this is from personally speaking myself, you know, when I met my ex, I was 20 years old and he was already, you know, in his mid 30s. And so there was a certain comfort in knowing that if I were to fuck up somehow, that he knew what to do to fix it for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But not only that, when we were having conversations, most of my friends had always been older anyway. So I had always been able to actually carry a conversation that was somewhat intelligent and well-informed because of my relationships that I had with older people in my life. And so it was pretty normal in a sense to be able to just navigate a new world and his friends and his parents and all of that relatively easy because of my personal experiences, but there was also a safety net for me there, knowing that he was established and that, you know, there was much that I can learn, but there was also much I could contribute. But I had a sense of more I found more comfort in the sense of knowing that he was established and that he knew what he was doing and that I could learn more from him, even though I had something to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it definitely does. Well, the other thing I was just thinking about is Mark was able to make all his mistakes before he met me. Mm. So he grew up in a lot of the other relationships he was in. I mean, he knew why his marriage didn't work out. He knew what was the missing piece there. So I feel like in some ways I benefited from his life experience. If we had been closer to age and we met when he was younger, we would not have dated. Mm-hmm. Like I would
be the ex-wife.
I would have been like, no thanks.
No, she probably would have been the ex-lady. She's not made for marriage.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for respecting that boundary.
Yeah. So she just would have been peace out. Nice try.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting too. And that's what I did not find in other relationships I had been in is people's willingness to talk about what they wanted or needed from a relationship. And being with someone who had kids forced us to also talk about that up front, which was, and I would encourage other people who are in those spaces not to pretend that that's not part of the equation. So like he knew that he didn't want to have more kids. He had 2 girls. They were beautiful. They were past diapers and they could get up in the morning and make themselves breakfast. Mm-hmm. And that was like awesome. Did he want to return to feeding and caring for infant, toddler, little kids? No. And I knew I didn't want kids. Mm-hmm. So I think those were things that we had probably much earlier conversations about in our relationship than one would normally have. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
It sounds like it's a good idea. In a way that's not like, oh, I want to have 2 kids and a dog and live in a house. You know, like that's...
Right, not creepy.
Like creepy.
Yeah, not like, oh, I've already envisioned all of this.
Right.
Are you on board?
Which I guess is just the negative of that, right? Or the opposite side of that is I don't want that. And you have those conversations early. It's interesting that for women, people always think that there's some space where you're going to change your mind. Oh, you think that now because you're 22, but you'll change your mind when you're 35. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's easier for people to believe you when you say what you say when you're talking to someone who's already in that space. Like, I also have already decided I don't want any more kids. So I believe you when you say that.
Right.
So that's great. So we've talked a little bit about his ex-wife. Tell me I don't know any, I have like little tiny, like teenage goings-ons with you're with someone who's had an ex-girlfriend. But what is it like to be with someone who has an ex-wife? Like, have you ever, when I wrote this question down, I was like, when I say, did you ever have to set boundaries? It already sounds negative, like the TV version of the ex-wife. And I watched, what's her name? Jada Pinkett had a conversation about Will Smith and his ex-wife and sort of co-parenting and that kind of thing. I don't want it to sound like I'm assuming that it's negative, especially because I know it hasn't always been. But did you ever have to set boundaries? Was there ever anything that came up with like, ex-wife needs to stay over there? Tell me what it's been like having a partner who has an ex-wife who is visible and a part, like basically a part of your life.
Yeah, I remember, actually, this is one of my, Mark and I had first started dating and we were going somewhere and we were I think he was dropping off child support check to the house, to her house. And she was married at the time, had another, she has a son, Tom, who's, Tom's like 12 now and he's got Downs, so he's special needs and a great kid and a great brother to
It's crazy. I feel like I heard he was 4. Like,
yeah.
The time just flies by.
No, he's like almost a teenager, which is crazy. So, and getting really tall. So we were over at the house and I hadn't met them yet and they kind of had heard about me. Mark had kept other girlfriends. He had this policy, which I thought was actually really smart, where he, after his divorce, he dated and he, was meeting people, but he never allowed anyone to meet the girls. So I think I was one of the first people who had met the kids because it was serious and he knew it was serious. And so we were sitting in the driveway and Mark's like, oh, you should just come in. Just come into the house and meet everybody.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like,
don't you want to have a conversation about this first?
I was just like, if I was your ex-wife, there's no way I would be happy about.
And she's young.
Yeah. No kidding. I would not want that
girl.
Get
this perky bitch out of my house.
Yeah. Like, and she looks young.
Right.
Like, not only is she looks like she's 18. And so
I'd be like, oh no, we're fighting.
So he's like, no, it's fine. She's cool. Just come inside. So I walk in the house and his ex had like laundry. She's like bringing laundry downstairs and doing normal evening activities for someone who's in their home. And I was just like, hi, Melon. Sorry, I really didn't want to come in, but he said it was going to be okay. Like, I'll step back outside.
Oh, my God. Diarrhea of the mouth.
And she was just cool because she's got it's unusual. She's just this really easygoing person who...
She's breezy.
She's totally breezy.
Easy breezy, beautiful covered girl.
So she's totally breezy. And so there was a little bit of a crisis early on in our relationship, where her current relationship ended. And, we ended up having the girls full time. I think it was within the first 2 years of me living, with Mark and, when I moved in and so that was a big adjustment for me to go from like 3 nights a week or 4 nights a week to full time bonus person.
Yeah.
Go to school. Go to shipping. Yeah. Driving school to and from pickups and helping with homework and straightening hair at night and making sure people take showers and go to sleep on time and cooking for people, a whole family. And there were a couple times during that period where his ex's life was crazy and in just this chaotic upheaval. And so she had a tendency to, just because we were very stable, just stop by and take advantage of stability and sometimes drop off her other son for me to hang out with the girls. And so
hang out with, that's
that's
a diplomatic way.
Yeah. So during that period, I did set boundaries.
Okay.
But they were needed.
Yeah. No, I can't take care of your kids. I'm already taking care of your kids.
I think, but I mean, and that wasn't even a fight, which is like, oh, right, I didn't even think of that. Like, I'm too breezy to think that's an issue. You all are nice. There's safe space. I need to take care of some shit because there's stuff going on. And, but no, I think I try to leave their relationship and what they, how they parent, that's really between them. And how she parents is with her and her girls. And that's where I think that bonus idea, it really comes into play, because I'll answer questions and I'll be a person who's, so when you're going through puberty, sometimes you don't want to talk to your parent about that because it's really embarrassing. And so for me, that was something that was it was kind of weird, but okay. And I think our friendships as we were growing up at boarding school, you guys were at boarding school, in some ways, those conversations were much more mature than had we been at a normal high school and everyone was going home to their parents. Like, I feel like that trained me a lot for talking to preteen girls about, oh, this might be happening to you right now. And if you're over my house and you get your period, like, this is what we do. And, so it sounds weird that just happened when I was in my 20s. And then like 10 years later, my friends started having kids and I was like, oh, they're in college now? It's cool.
You're like already having empty nest, right?
Yeah. Let's get a dog.
Well, at least you're ahead of the curve.
Let's get a dog. You did get a dog.
I did get a dog.
So what kind of dog do you have?
She is a Shiba Inu mix, sort of. We're not sure. She's a mutt.
Well, they're great outdoor dogs in the snow. They love the snow. My friend has I have a friend that has 3 of them, 3 Shiba Inus, and one here in New Haven that has one. And his name is Keiko. He's so cute.
He's nice and fluffy.
Very fluffy and loves the snow, but he sheds everywhere.
Yeah, Sadie's a mix, so she's not so fluffy, but she's the same size and markings.
They're gorgeous dogs, though. Great snow dogs.
Candace's kids are at least Lincoln is incredibly allergic, which is awful.
Oh. So we have our own Benadryl at her house. I have some friends who have animals, and we keep Benadryl at their house, just in case. So I mean, it works out. It works out. We don't stay away. It's not death. It's not death, but it's
puffy
uncomfortable.
eyes. Puffy eyes.
Yeah.
Rubbing
but
eyes.
We still go. Okay, so I had a question here about marriage, but we already talked about a little bit about it. I guess the last thing on that is just like, how do you manage, because, you're like a 21st century woman, right? In a partnership that you have your plans, and it has nothing to do with what everybody else's plans are. And I feel like people still, even though we try to be as open and like understanding of everybody's different whatever, people still have ideas about how a relationship should definitely be going towards marriage and children. And so I guess related to this conversation, but on a tangent, is how do you manage people who can't understand or can't accept, or are just stuck in this way of, oh, but you're gonna get married eventually, or like, I mean, I think even and foot in my mouth or whatever has been like, oh, but you live in the house. Like, what happens if something happens and you're not married? Like, how do you manage those sorts of questions and those sorts of thoughts about what comes with marriage, and how you sort of forward plan and life plan around the fact that you're not going to get married?
So there's so I'll be completely honest. So there's a little bit of just cognitive dissonance avoidance of some of those rougher legal issues. Yeah. Like I've lived in the same house with Mark for 10 years and a ton of sweat equity, and occasionally I'm like, hey, you need to put me in a will. You need a will. And then you need to put me in it, or we need to change the deed on this house, which also makes me a little queasy, which is weird. I guess I have commitment issues at the bottom of it. 11 year
as the baseline commitment issues.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, as you said, marriage is not for everyone, but then there's also those things that, although you're not married, you're investing time in this relationship. And so there should be certain benefits that come with that time invested,
And some of those things only come with that paper.
Correct.
Right.
But there's other legal ways besides marriage certificate that you could come to an agreement as a couple as to what you're entitled to should something happen to your significant other. Because, it's very common for these types of situations to be investigated and thought about and talked about openly in the gay community. Before marriage equality, it was very big, right? What happens if I fall in the hospital? You're my significant other. And we may not have it in paper, but what rights do I have?
Right.
What rights are you giving me?
So how do you guys talk about that? Like what?
Well, it's interesting you bring up what happens if I'm hospitalized or so I don't know if I really want to get into the full.
Yeah, you don't have to.
You don't have to. Whatever you're comfortable with.
But at some point in time, Mark was not well, and he was sick. And so we went through the domestic partnership. We became domestic partners, and so that he could be on my insurance, which is great that in Connecticut, they passed a law to require insurance companies to recognize domestic partners for this very reason, understanding that not everyone who is partnered and living together and going to make medical potential decisions for their significant other has a marriage license. And so we went down that route, and that was one way legally for us to be connected.
Is that a thing you have to go and register as domestic partners?
You do it through your insurance company because work provides it. Before marriage equality, that was how many same-sex couples were able to actually make some sort of legal decisions for their partners because they had them on their insurance.
Okay. And so there's a few ways that you can declare yourself domestic, cohabitating, having shared bills or a shared bank account.
Yep.
And then we signed it wasn't maybe an official affidavit, but we signed a notarized document saying that we shared decision-making around each other's medical. So in case of a crisis, I could make decisions for him and he could make decisions for me. And that was all in file with the insurance companies and then with the hospital. That happened a couple of years into our relationship. And so I think that's been the most formal way that we've dealt with it. And I think, money for all couples is a really challenging conversation. We all have a lot of emotional baggage and cultural ways that we've been taught to deal with finances. And so I think that that's something that is an ongoing thing that I deal with in this partnership because you forget in the day-to-day when things are good and you've got all your other shit figured out, emotionally you're cool. And then you're like, I don't want to deal with that. Like I come home at night and I have a place to stay and we share the bills and we got to, So sometimes yeah.
It's good when it's good, but then it could get very messy when things, hit the fan.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when there's kids involved, when there's an ex-wife involved, when there's other variables, parents and opinions, and it can get very dicey. So having a plan or some sort of documented, this is what we want to do should XYZ happen is really critical.
Oh, yeah.
I'm shaking my head.
You're shaking your head on radio like they can see you.
I know.
Well, and it's something to work on. It's something that when you're in a type of relationship that you're in and where marriage is not an option and that's perfectly fine, there has to be other ways for you to be able to secure your financial future, because what if you're 40 years in,
Right.
and you're living in a home that you made with this man for 40, 50 years, and God forbid he passes away. What happens next?
Right.
Where do you end up?
Right. No, and as someone who in my day job before
and we didn't mean to have a come to Jesus talk with you here. We didn't bring you here to take you to task.
Is this what you do every week?
No. I'm not telling you what to do.
It's
I'm
for
simply
everybody
saying
else.
that
for the worldwide audience.
For those that
we highly recommend.
I admire the fact that you boldly say, marriage is not for me. And there are a lot of people out there that think that way, and it is perfectly okay, but know that there's certain things that you will have to do differently in order to ensure that if you are going to have a very long-winded relationship with anyone, that it is that in the end, it is the best possible outcome for everyone involved.
Oh, right. No, I agree. This is a weird anecdote, But
let's go with it.
Mark mediated his own divorce.
Interesting.
So it's really not difficult. It's not hard to do, but it's not something that people typically do. So if you have an amicable, I can never say that word. Amiable divorce, you can go through
or amicable.
Thank you. You can go through the procedures through the court on your own and mediate your own divorce. And he and his ex were able to do that, and they came to consensus about assets and kids and support, all very reasonably, and where both parties came out feeling like their needs had been met. And I think in some ways, my knowledge of that situation and then my comfort in our conflict resolution, even though I fully understand that changes in adult relationships constantly, provides me some safety net about, okay, so if this shit does hit the fan and in 2 years we're like, all right, see ya, that I feel like there's an established history of being able to navigate that situation. I get the dog.
Right. That's a baseline. That's where we start.
I get Sadie. I get all my furniture.
Right.
Hey,
It's good.
See you later.
I remember having this conversation because James and I were together for like 10 years before we got married. And I remember something he said. He was just, I said, but this was basically sort of because I wanted to get married. I'm like, you're just like, what are you doing? Well, we can't go on like this. We have to get married. That's where I was coming from. But he's like, Candace, my parents are not. I think what I said was, what happens if something happens to you and you and I talked about something, but your parents come in and they say they want something else? They're like, well, my parents are not like that. I was like, that doesn't matter. You can't use that. But this idea that you just, I feel like this is becoming a call to make a will, right? Like to make a will. I think will is probably the most official thing. But have a plan, write it down, have a document. Isn't there a famous person who had a prenup on a napkin? A director or something, like anything that calls you to really just take a second to have the difficult conversation, right? Like, and I think a lot of us are afraid of mortality, real mortality or mortality of our relationship. I don't know if that's a thing that we say, but
it is now.
Like, you don't want to think about when the shit goes sour, right? But as adults, part of adulting is to think about all the different possibilities and how do we make sure as adults that we make sure that each of us come out okay, right? Even if we're grieving, like final grieving or just like relationship ending grieving, you just want to be able to, as an adult, have a conversation before you're emotionally too like jacked up to have it, to say what you want and what you want to happen and what you think we can get to. And that's basically a will. So I guess this is kind of a call to action for everybody to really kind of put down on paper somewhere, like get it notarized, what your plan is for, and like, I don't know. I don't want to say end of relationship because I don't want to think it's about the end of the relationship. It's just about your future.
Major life changes. And those can happen at any moment. And I think that having a partner who has health issues and who have been a variety of things over the years has made me really think about that. Yeah. So I even have less of an excuse not to have my shit in order.
Right.
But no, and I think, no one. I remember I pushed my parents who are in their 60s and have been in the same house with one another on a mortgage. And I remember having this conversation with my mom, who's not, my dad's more of the sole breadwinner. And I said, if he passes away, that house goes to probate. Like that doesn't go to you. Even though you're on the mortgage, we're children. As children, we have a right to our father's property. And so you need to so even in coupling where you have shared property, there's some things that need to be figured out.
Like, Mom, I'm trying to help you out, or else the house comes to me.
Right. Otherwise, we got issues, and we got to figure out what to do for you. So I think that this is really important conversation. It gets to the fact that people don't like to talk about money,
which is usually
relationships,
planning, life planning, just basic adulting stuff. We're all afraid to really like put a stake in the ground and look at it and make some decisions about like, I don't even want to make a business plan, let alone a life plan, like it's hard. It's really hard because you just want to live in the moment and be like, oh, I love you so much right now. But like, I might not later, or I might be mad at you, or you might get sick and I don't know what to happen. And I might be caught up in like overwhelmed in the fact that you're sick or that something happens. Like literally if something happened to James right now, I would just like jump in front of the bus. Like, I don't know what to do.
Well, that's when you call us.
Right. We call Ellen. You find some people, you have your people. But this is what I'm saying. Like, you get so comfortable. And if I'm being honest, I'm probably like that sort of, I don't know, what is it? Like cis hetero situation where you sort of rely on the fact, oh, well, we're married, so it'll all be fine. But it's probably not. You know what I mean? So even for people who are married in like cis hetero relationships or whatever, like we also, again, I feel like this has become a commercial to make plans for your life. Like, take a second to be an adult and make a fucking plan, because who knows what can happen. And you've gotten really comfortable in whatever situation you're in now, but the fucking tide could turn so fast for better or worse. And you just got to protect everybody involved, not just yourself, but especially if there are children involved or like.
Well, I was actually thinking, have you guys had a conversation on this show yet about parents thinking about their kids and what happens? This has got morbid all of a sudden. I'm sorry.
It did. See, but that's
just got really dark.
Well, it's not dark. But it's real adults.
Well,
no, we haven't had a conversation about wills and end of life planning.
So my younger brother, who is he was 20 when he and his lovely wife had their first baby. And I remember when Reed was a baby, they came to me and I was like, all 5 years older. And they said, well, if something happens to us, I think, actually my brother got into a terrible car accident right after Reed was born. But, so they said, we're thinking about, we are going to have a will and we're thinking about who's going to be the guardian of our child. And now they have 4 kids and I think they've figured this all out. They have 2 houses and 4 kids and they're way on top of this. And they're like, because we know how we were raised and we know what values we want our kids to be raised with. And we realize that there's lots of grandparents in the picture who could be part of these equations. And so but
don't forget to tell them, right?
Right.
Because God forbid something were to happen to my brother or my sister-in-law. My brother has 8 kids. I'm not going to end up with 8 kids in a house by surprise. Like, oh, by the way, you were on the will. You're their guardian now. I'm like, And don't get me wrong. I would take my studio, the other 2 bedrooms, the living room, the Xbox, that TV. No, but my thing is, I'm more than happy to take my brother's kids if something were to ever happen. I love those kids to death, but you got to prepare me for that. Like I always say to my mom, I know that you're going to get older and you're going to get to that age and where you're not going to be able to do things for yourself, where you're not going to be able to live just you and your husband anymore by yourselves. And I love you, and I will make sure that you don't end up in a home. You'll always have a place in my home, right? Us Spanish people, this whole, assisted living thing is a very foreign concept for us. So I know that eventually my mother will end up in my house because I'm the only one that has my shit together. And with her will probably come a couple of siblings. Yeah. But I kept saying to my mother, Ma, as long as you possibly can, hold out and do everything that you can. And only up till then, like right to the possible last minute, then dump that burden on me and I'll take it. Because, I still want to be able to enjoy myself. And so she does good and takes care of herself for the most part. But I know that that's also coming. So, if you're making those kind of plans, just make sure that the people that you're planning on including, no. That's important.
Okay, so the overall theme here is like, get your shit together, be an adult, have a conversation, and make a will. I feel like we should have had a conversation for what is that, documents? There's like an easy documents service Remember
Easy Wills?
Easy Wills or something like that. Anyway, we should have had a commercial for that prepared. But
we'll put it in your business plan, Candace.
Yeah, we'll put it in my business plan that doesn't exist. So pulling back, and I don't want to say that that's morbid, right? The conversation didn't just turn morbid or turn dark. The conversation was adult, right?
Real.
Like,
it turns
real. And I don't have a will, but like we talk about these things and we know these things, but they have to be written down on paper, and it's not just good enough good enough is not good enough in this situation. You have to have these conversations. And when you're in sort of a quote unquote like special situation or like a non-traditional relationship, or, you know, you have kids or whatever, you have to think about these things. And so, like, if this is a call to action for people to go out and make a will, people who are married, people who have kids, people who are single, people who are married with no kids, like, you should probably just make a will, all of us. And nobody at this point is immune to needing a will, even though I think we are.
I will say, though, so ready for another product placement. I do have life insurance.
Oh, that's good.
Well, that's good.
Oh, my God. Mine lapsed this year. I didn't, like, pay for I didn't re-up
premium.
The thing. Oh,
do
my
it,
God,
Candace.
I'm so terrible.
Yeah, I have, like, so...
I had it, and then I wasn't working, and I wasn't in that, like, space of going out of work. And when you like going out to work and you do all your things, I'm just like, oh, I'll get to it because I'm in my house, and I didn't, and I feel terrible, and I kind of laugh about it, but it's not a laughing matter. James was like, what about us? Like, what's gonna happen to us if something? I was like, first of all, nothing's happening to me, right? Like, it's just. But again, sometimes I talk to my mom about retirement, and she's like, I'm not gonna die. I'm like, listen, that's not what I said. I said retirement. Like, we're just afraid. I think as a culture, we are afraid to talk, to think ahead, to make plans, to like envision a world that's different from the one that we're in now. And then we use terms like it's morbid or like I'm not dying, or, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. to brush off the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't come in tonight planning to talk about wills and like life plans, but basically life plans are important, and with that come like adulting and making a life plan.
Time waits for no one. We just keep getting older by the second.
Right. And not even older. Like, things happen. Like, I remember when I was thinking about things we could talk about tonight, there was sort of this idea of like your partner who's older was sick. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's this, if I'm being honest, this idea that, oh, you have an older partner, he's going to be sick. There are plenty of 35-year-olds who had cancer. You know, there are plenty of 20-year-olds who had cancer. Like sickness isn't an old folks problem. It's a problem, right? And mortality isn't an old folks problem. It's an issue we all have to deal with. And so even in my like phrasing of questions and thinking about this situation made me realize that I live in my like cis hetero married world, right? Like, I just think about things in that way.
It's a lovely world though, Candace.
Right? But it's the only place where I'm the majority. And it's in our culture to think that, well, I got married, so everything's safe. Like, I'm good. Like, there are probably rules about what happens when your spouse dies. And there probably are, but they might not be helpful. Like, who knows? The point is that we all have to not use terms like morbid and dark and that kind of thing to have these conversations and make them. That's the whole point of this show, to make these conversations that feel taboo, feel hard, feel like things we don't want to grapple with, to make them commonplace. Because
unless you think you're going to die as a result of it. Like, I'll give you an example, though. Like,
that was dark.
It's not morbid, but unless you think you're going to die. Like, my mom knows she's on my life insurance, right? Mm-hmm. And I've got a very hefty amount of life insurance. I think it's like almost $500,000. Mm-hmm. But if I were to die, she knows she's one of my beneficiaries. Yeah. But my nephew is also one of my beneficiaries. But I won't tell him because I think he'll push me down the stairs to get to it quicker. So depending on what, he doesn't know. Right. But my mom knows. Like, I'm safe with my mom.
Yeah. No, I mean, but it's
like, it's true. I'll be walking down in front of him at the football stadium. I'm getting paid. Yeah, I know.
I just said that to James tonight. I was like, hey, I don't have life insurance. Stop playing around. I don't know where my train of thought was going, but
you were talking about normalizing.
Yes,
this conversation.
That is what this conversation is about. Normalizing these things. That's what this show is about. Normalizing things that are often taboo, or not even taboo, but just sort of quiet. I feel like there's so many adult things that were hidden from me that I had to find out on my own, in the dark, by myself, in pain, right? Like, and that shit is just not
could mean
there.
So many things, Candace.
But it's all those things,
Yeah.
And I feel like those are and then when I freely talk about childbirth, about breastfeeding, about relationships, about family, when I freely talk about those things, people look at me like, girl, like, there's like business, there's like home business you talk about and stuff you don't talk about. I'm like, yeah, and that's why we're all struggling out here. And that's why people might pass up the opportunity to date a really fly guy who's an age imposter. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm going home with that line.
I mean, don't pass up the opportunity because you don't know any better, in any of these situations. Like, be open to it. And if you have some information, like, I'm so glad that you were willing to come on and talk about this stuff. Like, I knew some of these things, and if I'm being totally honest, I totally learned some things tonight, right? Like, and I've known you through this whole relationship, but they're like questions that I have and I don't want to ask them. And so anyway, I'm so glad that you were willing to come on and have this honest conversation. And thank you to Mark. Shout out to Mark for being a fly dude. Who really sort of like made it not awkward for these 25-year-old girls who like met him. Like, it takes a village. All of us have to be cool in this situation. So shout out to Mark, and shout out to you for coming tonight. I'm so grateful for you to come and talk about something that seems, I said earlier, it feels like when there's an age difference in relationships, people get a little weird, right? And it's obviously you're in this position where he's older, and him being older is more normal or more accepted. But there are plenty of other situations where I just saw a clickbait thing on Mary Lou Letourneau. Is that the name from the like teacher who dated the 17-year-old boy or something,
Didn't they just show like a whole frame of women who've dated their students?
I swear to God, this is Big Brother, right? Because I knew I was having this conversation. They know I was having it, and it's coming up in my clickbait shit. It's like Mary Lou Letourneau, I think is her name, which is an older woman who was dating a younger dude, he's like 12 when they got together.
And then she went to jail, but when she got out,
they got
married.
Kids. They got back together?
They did.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation.
Again, I don't want to... I was just going to say, I don't want to compare your relationship to them, but it's basically the same thing. Except no jail is involved.
So if they got together when she was 42 and he was 25,
right. It would have been
judgment.
fine. Right.
Or how about 18?
Right. At least 18 would have been fine. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you coming to have this free and open and honest conversation about your current relationship. And I think that people will benefit from it. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Candace.
Oh my God.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and giving us the lowdown on how to have that kind of relationship, because not everyone has a traditional one, and it's okay.
It is okay. Like, anyway, I don't want to change the subject. So let's move on, because we've got to wrap up.
Yes, we do.
Or else I could talk to Ellen all night. Right?
But you did say your hashtag Mom So Hard tip.
Yeah, so I decided this week, or in my week off, I was thinking about my life and like life planning. And I was like, I don't have to have all the answers, right? Like, I put this pressure on myself that I have to have all the answers, and I don't have a single answer, let alone all the answers. So I posed the question to Ellen earlier about, we'll use my hashtag Mom So Hard tip for this week will actually be some advice that Ellen might share with those out there who are either in a relationship or looking at a relationship. Like, what is your advice for people who are considering or in a relationship where there's a substantial age difference, or an ex-wife, or some children.
Or combination.
Like, a combination of any of
all
these
those things. All those
because that's what makes it juicy,
hurdles.
right?
Well, I think that's a great question.
I guess it's a non-traditional relationship.
Yeah. So I think my advice would be as honest with yourself as you possibly can be. So every 6 months or so after having strangers come up to me and ask me what I want from my life and why I don't have a traditional life, I actually ask myself, I'm like, okay, do I actually want kids now? Do I actually want to get married? And it's like, no, I still know who I am. But I think that having that ability up front in a non-psychotic way to have a conversation about this is what I think I want, and I'll check in with you. Because if that changes, we may need to change how this works. Or making sure to ask the person you're going to be with or you are with, because if your potential partner or current partner has kids, their life also changes over time and what those kids need and the way. So you may have walked in the door with one custody arrangement and end up 6 months down the road with another one and
full time.
Yeah. And then that'll change again. And so just being honest about what you need in those spaces where there's a lot of other things going on that have nothing to do with who you are and who you were before you got into the relationship. So don't forget what you wanted and what you needed. And then communicate that and is probably the most important thing that I've found in making this thing work.
Okay. And I hear you saying that you should check in with yourself and with your partner periodically or regularly to make sure that those things are still matching up.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably true for any
relationship. For any relationship.
Yeah,
right,
for any
You're
relationship.
in that relationship too.
Yeah.
Your feelings, your thoughts, your needs are important as well.
And then when you have a couple other factors, sometimes you need to check in a little bit more because there's maybe something else happening that's out of your control. But I think that's really been the key of our thing working out.
I love it.
That's
I love
awesome.
it. Well, thank you so much again. I'm so glad you came. So let's wrap up.
I would say so.
I know
Great
you would. You
conversation
always
tonight.
would.
Yeah. I'm like, it's time to go home.
Whatever.
Oh, wait. I'm already home.
Whatever. I'm having a good time. Plus, it's basically 2 weeks
Are you
into
kidding me?
one.
This is like her break time right here.
I know.
This is her breezy time. So.
It is. But I was like, I'm leaving the house one way or the other.
But she made it. I'm super happy that you're back.
I did.
I'm sure that those that listen to the show will also.
I know. Well, I'm so
that.
glad that Ellen was here. And again, I said to her earlier that a lot of the questions I already knew the answers to, but some of them, honestly, I didn't have the answers to. And it never made sense for me to sort of ask her, even though we're really good friends and we've been really good friends for a long time. Again, when you're ready to tell me these things or when things come up, like it's not my place to be asking you all your business, like be deep in your relationship.
Unless you own, like you run a show.
Unless you run a show.
This is, I think we should talk about this day. What do you feel about that?
Right. I think that the people would learn a lot, including me, about your answers. So
that's awesome. I
think it was really cool of her to come on and have this conversation and talk sort of freely about these things. Because again, I'm constantly remembering that I'm a grown ass woman and the people around me who are the same age as me are like fucking grown, right? And dealing with things that I reserved for my mom or the adults, the quote unquote adults in my life. And I'm reminded daily that includes me now. So, I just really wanted to have this conversation to share with other people because I know that people, especially in this time, I was feeling the other day like super lucky to be coupled up because some of my friends are still are still searching. And if you are going to count out a potential partner who just because they're older or just because of whatever, like you probably shouldn't because the available count for you is not as big as it once was, or you wish it was, or you know what I mean? So anyway, I was really excited for this conversation.
It was good. We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
So, we'll be back next week.
Yes, we will.
Regular.
Yes.
Like regular.
Yeah, I think the only week of December 20th is that week that we're going to figure it out. Wednesday, I believe, we'll record.
Yeah. So. But anyway, thanks so much for joining us again this week and every week. Again, we took one break in the last, is this 34 weeks?
35.
35 weeks. I'm so proud of this.
Well, I believe this is episode 36.
Yeah, I'm so proud of this, like, basically full-term baby that we have produced. Yeah. Like, so thank you so much for being here week after week. And if you're new, thank you so much for listening tonight. Don't forget to subscribe and come back. We'll be here every week. I will see you next time, or talk to you, hear you, you'll listen to me next time.
Yes. You'll get it.
I think the bottle of wine is done.
I gave her a week off and look what happens.
And now I'm confused. Anyway, come back soon and we'll see you next week. Bye. This show is produced by Tom Ortiz at Digital Stream Radio. It's available for download on Podbean. Follow us at Facebook at Breezy Moms Podcast or email us at breezymomspodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, don't stress, just breathe.